I'll ask that we do our first submission, not quite submission, I shouldn't say submission, but our first blog post, really, or just post with images from your Scratch game. And we'll talk about how to take a screenshot. You can take a screenshot from your Scratch game and post it onto your Google site. Now, those of you using your Raspberry Pi, you might just post about your Scratch game, but and we'll do that once we finish Pong, so either today or on Monday. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I'm doing very well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to open Scratch, and if you guys remember at the end of last class, we were working on a sun chasing game. And you can find that by going to File, Open, and it'll show you your different projects. It was Sun Chase. And that game was just a simple kind of when space bar is pressed, avoid the sun, and you get stuck. Today, we're going to start a new game. So to get to a new file, File, New. I don't need to save that current project. And we're going to be starting with a brand new file. So take a couple minutes, open Scratch, and open to a new file. Let me take a look. I see some questions here. Valerie, I'm not sure if you have a meeting tomorrow. Ooh. Did not mean to make that full screen. Not sure if we have a meeting tomorrow. You can try to contact Mr. Dubik during this webinar, but since I do not attend the labs, I'm not always most up to date with the schedule. But Mr. Dubik or Mrs. Dubik would definitely know if you want to shoot Young Engineers of Today an email. I can't use my Raspberry Pi today. No worries, can't use your Raspberry Pi today. We watched the webinar. Recorded, but still, stay with us tonight, join with us, you can answer the questions and see what we're doing. Mr. Dubik, I have to restart my project because I forgot to save. Oh no! Yeah, you can do the same thing as that you did Monday as well, no worries. Alright, that's fine. Caitlin, you are not in trouble. I'm not sure what you didn't start, but you're not in trouble. I don't have a game because I forgot to save it. Alright, well, we're definitely going to take some extra precautions when saving. It's okay, we're completely starting over today. That's okay. No one should be ashamed or nervous. I mean, I can't go back and redo the Sun game. You can watch the recording if you'd like, but we're just going to move forward. No worries. No worries, you guys. Oh, good, you did save it. Cool. No worries. We're going to start Pong today as a group. Oh, it's going to be fun. All right, so as a reminder, I'm going to say, eyes on my screen, and that's when I want you to be paying attention to what I'm doing in Scratch. And then I'll say, all right, you guys give it a try, and then you'll go to your screen and give it a try. Okay? Raise your hand if you need another minute to open Scratch. All right, we'll give them another minute to open Scratch. Good, we got some excitement to make Pong, that's great. Until we see that, and I would love to give everyone a shout out. I just saw that Gwen posted this here. So we're going to check out, Gwen, are you with us this evening? Gwen is not with us this evening. Oh, you know what? Different group. Hold on. Let me switch. Oh, is Josie with us this evening? Josie is with us. All right. So while we're waiting, someone's still opening Scratch. we'll go ahead and check out Josie's game. So Josie A made this. Josie Kitty. Alright, thanks for playing. The higher score is better, same with lives. Alright. In this game, push the arrow keys in order to move the ball. Go on, try it. Oh, very cool. Terrific. Good. Alright, and oh, very neat game. I don't know how interesting it is for you. Oh, version. I cannot emphasize enough, I really want you guys to be using Scratch 1.4. This is the kind that would be on your Pi, alright? But very cool. This is on Edmodo. And very neat. Always feel free to post on Edmodo if you did something cool. And we'll check it out. I'm definitely checking them all out. Annika, no, it's, you know what? However, the challenge, just give it a try. Just take a look at it. I wouldn't recommend it until after we do Pong, but it's not super hard. All right, great job. And who said that she did a really good job? Mira. Thanks, Mira. All right, so we got our brand new Scratch program up. And the first thing we're going to do is add some sprites. So we actually do not want Scratch Cat. So we'll go ahead and delete the Scratch Cat sprite. And we're going to choose a new sprite from File. And if you remember, as on my screen, I right-clicked Delete to get rid of Scratch Cat. I'm going to click this little folder with a star. And under Things, I'm going to find, and you can choose baseball, basketball, or beach ball. Any of these three. Those are the ones I want you to choose from. I really do want you to choose from these three. I know there are some people that like to do kind of the funkier stuff for right now, and you're going to be able to change it later. But for right now, I want you to choose one of these three. I'm going to choose beach ball for right now. All right, go. I'm sorry, I should have said that. Go ahead and do that yourself. Once you've added a ball, change it to ball. That should be the name. Sprite. What brave soul can raise their hand and tell me why it is really important to rename your sprite from Sprite 1 to Ball? Got a few hands here. The first one I saw was Azelle, so Azelle, I'm going to call on you. Hey, Azelle. Hello? Sorry, I can't hear you. If you want to type in your response. Whoa. What about Caitlin? Hey, Caitlin, what do you think? I'm worried it might be me, but I cannot hear you all. We'll try one more. Let's see if Azelle did answer. She typed it in. She said you want to name them so you don't confuse them as you code, and I'm sure that's what many of you with raised hands were going to say. Azelle, thank you. I'm going to put hands down. We're going to do more questions today. Good job. Someone said I heard Azelle and Caitlin, and everyone said they could hear. So it must be me. I apologize, and I will check my. Maybe I have my speakers muted. I will check that. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So don't worry about shrinking it yet. Someone asked about that. Don't worry about that yet. What we're going to do is add our paddles. So we're actually going to paint those. So paint new sprite. Notice, eyes on my screen. I'm down here. I'm adding a completely new sprite. I am not adding a costume. Okay, that's two very fundamentally different things. If I wanted this beach ball to be doing the same commands but look different, for example, when you make the Frogger game, sometimes if the frog gets hit by a car, his costume changes to a splat. Then you would give that, this ball a costume. Maybe you want the ball to look like a fireball if you get to the super secret last round. Then you would add a costume. But if you want to add a paddle, which is going to have completely different commands than the ball, you need a new sprite. And that's what we need. So eyes on my screen, you're going to paint a new sprite. And we're going to use the rectangle tool for this, a filled-in rectangle. Whatever color you would like, I'm going to just do dark purple for now. And there we go. Go ahead, actually don't do that yet. Eyes on my screen, super important. You see this option, Set Costume Center? You want to do that. And notice I clicked it and now there's these crosshairs. And you want to click and drag and find the center and release. And then hit OK. Anytime you are changing a costume, painting a sprite, editing a sprite, you need to make sure that you set the costume center. And I will repeat that. Go ahead and do that now. Again, so you go into Paint New Sprite. You use the rectangle tool to draw a paddle. And then you set the costume center by clicking and dragging the crosshairs so that they're the center of the shape. Now, the reason that you do that, the reason that's so important, is because when you tell the paddle to move 10 steps, or go to, let's look at that one, go to 0, 0, and I think, who was it? Valerie, you asked this question, and I just didn't have time to get to it. You were like, well, what part goes to 0, 0? It's the middle. It's the center. That one pixel in the center that you set. Oops. That right there. That is what goes to 0, 0. That's just one pixel. So that's so important because you're going to have these big, complex-looking shapes. And they're going to act funky if you don't set the center correctly. All right, we're going to rename this paddle. All right, so you have your ball and your paddle. Ella, on the computer, you do it under Costumes, and it'll be up in the upper right-hand corner. Margot, my suggestion would be to go to your system preferences and try to reset the screen. So I don't know what kind of computer you're using, and you can message me that, but if you go to system preferences on my Mac, something like this. I'm answering some questions while letting people catch up. displays. That should help. All right, we're going to move forward. I'm sorry, Margot. It's okay if it's not perfectly in the middle. You're using your Raspberry Pi. Okay, Margot, it's going to be down here by like the start, and you go to System Preferences. All right, we're going to keep going, and then Margot, I'm going to check in with you again in a little bit. Hopefully you can figure it out. You got to just try resetting the display size. Right now we're going to add code for the paddle, and we did that Monday. We did a really similar code Monday, and it was how Scratch Cat moved, except now we only want the paddle to move left or right. So everybody, eyes on my screen. I'm going to give you a mini challenge. So when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to be showing you all the different tools you're going to need. You're going to want to see if a button is being pressed. And you're going to want to be checking on two different buttons. If a button is being pressed, you want to change X direction, right, where this paddle is, left or right, by 10, or change it by -10. Alright, and what you're sensing for is key pressed. The right and the left arrow key. Alright, so go ahead, if you can remember, and I'm leaving one block out here, or 2 blocks out here, go ahead and take about 2 minutes, try to remember, try to get it to work so that the paddle can move left and right when you use the left and the right arrow keys. Isel, what do you mean, how do I upload my Scratch project? Can you give me a little bit more information on what you're asking? Do you mean post? I'm not quite sure what you mean. How is Sandy? Sandy is doing very well, Caitlin. Thank you for asking. She is not a fan of the cold rain, though. She is a little bit of a wimp. She did not want to go on a walk this afternoon. All right. Does anyone have... Oh, you know what? Let me give you a full 2 minutes. And then, if anyone has it working and can show me their computer, I can give you the controls so that the class can see your desktop. You can show us what you did. Raise your hand. All right, I don't have any takers on showing. Okay. So some people are saying it's not working, but I'm doing exactly like you said. Well, let me show you the little trick of what we're missing. So if the right arrow is being pressed, change X by 10. And if the left arrow is being pressed, change X by -10. Now, this is going to check if the right arrow key, what's going to happen is the green flag is going to get clicked. The computer is going to check if the user is hitting the right arrow key. If the user is not hitting the right arrow key, it's going to skip down and check if the user is hitting the left arrow key. If the user is not hitting the left arrow key, it's just going to jump down and it's done. It's not going to do anything anymore. So, what are we missing? Yes, Annika, on it. Absolutely correct, Annika. It goes, the if-then statements go in forever loops. One forever loop. You just need one forever loop. So both of these if statements go in a forever loop. So now when the green flag goes, now we move left and right. Because what's happening is the computer is checking, and it's so fast that it can check to see if a key is being pressed many, many times a second. So this is looping through many, many, many times a second, actually. And it's really important. You don't want separate loops, okay? Because you want it to check if, it's now stuck in the forever loop. It's never going to leave that forever loop. You want to be checking both for right and left. And just for good measure, let's put a go-to block at the beginning. That's called an initial condition, so that every time it starts at 0, -140. So now it'll always start in the center of the board. Go ahead and finish coding that. Annika, great question. I don't know if you asked that after I said it, or you're asking why aren't we going to 0, 0? 0, 0 is the exact center of the stage, and we probably want the paddle to hang out towards the bottom of the stage, so it gives more space for the ball to bounce. Also, we want the ball to just be bouncing up. We don't want the ball to get stuck under the paddle. This paddle is going to be protecting a red area down here, which is how the user loses the game. I hear some of you don't have school tomorrow. Very exciting. 6 to 8 inches of snow, or 4 to 6, or I don't know, it keeps changing, but that's nuts for the end of February. Okay, eyes on my screen. We'll go back to 6 to 8. If on edge, okay, so what happens with if on edge bounce is it's going to flip it 90 degrees, so it's just going to start acting pretty funky. But that should work. Someone said, how do I get it to not go off the edge of the screen? If on edge bounce should work. You just got to make sure it's in the forever loop. Someone says, I hope we have school tomorrow. That's the sign of a good student. The ball, oh, I see what you're saying. The ball is going to go up and down. Okay, so we are going to move on to the balls code. And if you need more help with the paddle, we'll come back to that at the end if you need more help, or you can watch the recording. But we got to move on to the ball for right now. So no stress, but we'll come back to this if you didn't quite catch it. So just move on to the ball with us. So eyes on my screen. Notice when I click the ball sprite, no scripts are there. And this is going to be really, really similar to the sun's script. Nearly identical. So I'm going to do the same thing. Eyes on my screen. I'm going to put up some blocks here. And I want you to kind of sorry, I had a bit of a brain moment here. I want you to try and figure out how they piece together. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so eyes on my screen. I'm going to say when space key is pressed. That way, the user can play more than one round. So when the space key is pressed, it's almost like a reset. Okay. So what do I want to happen when the space key is pressed? Well, I want this ball we're always going to have it start out pointing right. That way we just know which way it's pointing. That way if the game ended and it was pointing, 15 degrees up, and that we use the turn 15 degrees, then it would force the ball to bounce back and forth like the sun did at first, right? We don't want that to happen. So we're going to start it pointing 90 degrees, and then the next step is to turn 15 degrees. These are our initial conditions. And right, we also need that go to 0, 0. So these are our initial conditions. They kind of go together. And we want to check to see if it's on the edge. If it's on the edge, it's going to bounce. If not, it's going to move forward 10 steps. And right, we don't want to use a change X by or a change Y by, because that's only going to let it move left to right or up and down. And we actually want it to move diagonally. So if the ball, eyes on my screen, is pointed this way, kind of in that northwest position, it will move 5 steps in the northwest position. Right now it's pointed 90 degrees. And if on edge bounce, if not, move 10 steps. So as on my screen, I know I keep saying that, but I want to make sure you're not trying to copy. Pay attention for a second. When it's traveling right now, when the ball is traveling across the screen, it's going to go through many, many, many loops, right? And I didn't put the loop in there, but this time I'm just going to put it in there for you all. You need these two in a forever loop. These are initial conditions. You only want it to happen at the start of the game. This is the real code of the game. This is going to take the computer about half a second to do, and then it's going to spend the rest of it checking to see if it's on the edge, eventually checking to see if it's touching the paddle, and if it's not touching one of those things, it's moving forward. So it's going to spend the great majority of the code just moving 10 steps, checking, moving 10 steps, checking, not touching anything, move 10 steps, check, not touching anything, move 10 steps, etc., 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 until it hits the wall. Then it's going to flip reverse direction, etc., etc. All right. So go ahead and with these hints, these are some pretty strong hints, put together the basic code for the ball. Okay, I have a lot of questions here. Aren't you going to do when ball clicked? No. I want the game to start when the user presses the space key. Can the user press the space key to end the game? In this case, you're pressing the space key to start the game. So if I wanted to, I could use the space key to end the game, but I don't want to in this case. I want it to be to start the game. We can talk about ending the game later if you'd like. The paddle keeps getting bigger and smaller. Annika, do you have different costumes? I'm not sure. When my paddle bounces, the controls switch change. Margot, then I wouldn't add, you gotta trust your user not to let the paddle jump off the screen. I don't know what to tell you. I was afraid that was gonna happen, but I guess when I was doing mine, it kind of hit twice so that the controls would change. I don't have a better answer right now. What do you press to pause the game? Well, Annika, we have to code everything. So we haven't coded anything to pause the game. We can code something to pause the game with P, but that's going to be challenging. We actually have to put that in the code. It's not built in. All right. Now ending the game, that's not that hard. But pausing the game, that's harder. All right, eyes on my screen. So what you should have done, the ball is gonna check first to see if it's touching the edge, and if it is, it's gonna reverse direction. That's that bounce, and if not, it's just gonna skip the bounce and move 10 steps. It's important that you're checking if it's on the edge first, because if you have it move 10 steps before it checks the edge, it'll get stuck on this edge, and then it can really maybe it tries to change direction, but it's already touching the edge, so it kind of gets stuck up there. So you really want to be conscientious in your ordering. And you want to check first if you're on the edge. And these kind of go together nicely, and when spacebar is pressed, you get these beautiful bounces, and your ball bounces across the screen. Now, it does not do anything when it encounters the paddle. That's not because your game is broken. That is because you haven't coded it to do anything when it touches the paddle. So we're going to do that next. So eyes on my screen, you want to check to see if, and I'm coding this in the ball, if the ball is touching the paddle. And if it is, what you want it to do, once it hits that paddle, again, eyes on my screen, you want it to immediately change point in direction 0, which it says is up. So what that looks like, if you look up here, is that blue line is going straight up. Because what you don't want to happen is it end up pointing down and trying to move down into the paddle. Because then again, you're going to get stuck, and it's going to look kind of weird. Because it's going to check and see, hey, I'm touching the paddle. Let me move 10 steps forward. Hey, I'm still touching the paddle. Let me try to get out of this paddle, but it's constantly checking it, and it's trying to point in all these different directions. As soon as any part of the ball hits the paddle, you want it to immediately be pointing upwards, away from the paddle. And for right now, we're just going to have it again turn 15 degrees to the right. Now, just like how you don't want it to move until it knows it's not on the edge, you definitely do not want it to move forward until it knows it's not touching the paddle. So we're going to first check to see if it's touching the paddle. If it's not touching the paddle, it'll check to see if it's on the edge, and then it will move. Note this, because this is really important. It does not move if it touches the paddle. It simply reverses direction. It does not move if it's touching the paddle. It simply reverses direction. And then it's going to continue down with the code. The only move 10 steps block you need is right there. You only need one. And it's going to get repeated many, many times a second. And green flag, space bar. And now it should interact. So go ahead and try that out. Great, Mira. Why does my ball flash in and out on one half when it's moving? Let me see. I don't know. I don't see what you're talking about. I am sorry. No, Valerie, it's okay if you put... Caitlin, I see your hand. I'm just answering some other questions. It's okay if you put the if on edge bounce before the if touching paddle, but you want all of your checks, quote unquote, before the move, and you want them all in the forever loop. Good question. I don't know what you mean by why does my ball try to bounce in one place. Do you mean why does it keep following the same path? That's because we're telling it to follow the same path, and we're going to fix that in just a moment. Mira, the reason that when your ball hits the paddle, so Mira asked, instead of doing point in direction 0, turn 15 degrees, all she did was turn 30 degrees. Well, this is just some geometry. So when the ball hits the paddle, eyes on my screen, now look at if that blue line was going like this. So the ball hit the paddle from going this way. The ball's going to, eyes up here, the ball's going to turn 30 degrees, like so, and it's still going to be touching the paddle. So again, it's going to try to move 10 steps forward and move 30 degrees, still touching the paddle, move 10 steps forward, move 30 degrees. It kind of does a spinny thing, right? That's because it's continuously touching the paddle and kind of flipping out. You need it to point straight up so that it's no longer moving towards the paddle, and then you could say turn 30 degrees, but we're going to fix that in just a moment. I don't know, Valerie, that's weird. Alright, let's see what Caitlin's question is. Hey Caitlin, what's up? What's going on? I'm so sorry, Caitlin. It's telling me that you're speaking, but it's not letting me hear you. So if you can hold on one moment. Alright, Caitlin, let's try now. Caitlin, I'm so sorry. I cannot hear you. I think other people can. I do not think it's your computer. I think it is mine. But at the same time, I still can't hear you. So I'm going to mute you again. I'm trying to change my audio. Caitlin, would you mind trying to type me a response or a question? I know, guys. I know you can hear her. I'm glad. Mira, it's going to do that based on the way it hits the paddle. If it hits the paddle this way, then it'll work. But if it hits the paddle this way, then it won't. Caitlin, I'm going to look for your response. Okay. This is the game where the ball bounces around, and if it hits the lava, you lose. Every time it bounces against the paddle, you gain a point. This is this game. All right, we're going to keep moving on. We're going to add a little bit more fun to the game. We're going to, instead of turning the same number of directions each time and starting pointed in the same direction each time, we're going to have it choose a random number. As on my screen, it's important which numbers that you're choosing. When the game starts, it really doesn't matter what direction that the ball is pointed in, but you don't want it to be pointed over 90 or negative 90. That's not going to be very fun. So what I would recommend is that you go from 90 to negative 89. And if you guys don't know where I'm getting these numbers, that looks like from 89 here up, if you look at my screen, to negative 89. And so now it can get started from any of these directions, and we're actually going to duplicate this. Let's actually do from 80 to negative 80. Okay, and that's how the game starts. And then when it actually hits the paddle, let's do from negative 60 to 60. So now, instead of always bouncing off in the same way, it adds some random elements to your game. You don't know how it's going to start, and you don't know how it's going to hit off your paddle, but you know it's still going to be facing upwards. It's not going to be facing in towards the paddle. So go ahead and do that. Caitlin, yes, some Pong games have blocks that you can knock out, and that would be a really cool mod for you to try to add. All right, someone wants to see the paddle code. I'm going to show you the paddle code back in just a moment, but I want people to get the opportunity to finish with this code first. All right, I'm going to switch back to the paddle code for a second. Someone requested that. Valerie, it is changing the rotation every time. So let me show you how you can tell. Because you should be able to kind of look at the code and ask that question. So, okay, hopefully Maya, you got what you needed. Here. Let's look at the ball again. So Valerie was saying, hey, when you pick this random number, does it set it for the whole game? Or does it choose a random number every time? And I think what she was asking was, when you add this green block, does it choose a random number once? Or is it going to choose it every time? And it chooses it every time. So once you're, let's say here, this first one, this block, this point and direction block, gets run how many times? And for some reason my audio is not working. I'm very sorry about that, but you can type in the answer. How many times does this point and direction block get run? Once. That's correct. Thank you, Maya. Once. This line only gets run once every time the space key is pressed. This gets run once. This forever loop gets run. All of the blocks within the forever loop get repeated many times per second. It's going to check to see if that ball is touching the paddle. If that ball is touching the edge, it's going to check these many times a second. And it's going to move 10 steps if both of these are not true. Let me rephrase that. If it is touching the paddle, it's simply going to reverse the direction of the ball, then run the move 10 steps. So move 10 steps will still get run. It will get run multiple times. I shouldn't say many times a second, but multiple times a second. Just the direction of the ball is going to change before it gets run. So this pick random times will be happening anytime the ball touches the paddle. It will choose a new random number. That is correct. Every time it hits the paddle, it points directly upwards, and then it rotates somewhere between -60 and 60 degrees. Maya needs to see the paddle code again, so we're going to go back there. And while we're back here, we're going to talk about how we're going to add a losing element to the game. So right now, it's not really a game, or at least not a very fun game, because you can't lose and you can't win. Okay? It's actually easier to add the losing element. And just based on the time tonight, we're not going to get to add these to our blogs tonight, but we will do that on Monday. And that's good, because we're going to add more fun things between now and Monday anyway. Hopefully, if you guys want to, you are welcome to. But in the last 10 minutes, I'm going to move through this a little bit quickly, but you guys can watch the recording too. So I'm going back to the ball code. And I'm going to click variables. And I'm going to make a variable. And I'm going to call that variable score. So again, I clicked variables, and you guys should be looking at my screen right now. There was nothing here. My only options were make a variable or delete a variable. I clicked make a variable, and I called my variable score. When space key is pressed, you want to set score to 0. And actually, I want all of these things to happen when the green the green flag is clicked too, so I'm just going to duplicate that for right now. I right-clicked, duplicated those blocks. It's not super important that you do that right now, but just for those of you who are watching the recording, or if you're watching the recording after, you can do that. And so that way, the user can just press the green flag to get started. They don't have to necessarily press the green flag and then press the space key. Okay. Actually, that's not going to quite work now that I'm looking at it, so I'm going to delete this. I apologize, I'm wasting precious time, but I don't want to get into the actual setup. So when the space key is pressed, score is set to 0. And we're going to add a line under if touching paddle, so that when the ball hits the paddle, it points directly upwards. It turns between -60 and 60, but also score is now changed by 1. That's going to be +1. So now you can very easily keep track of score. Go ahead and try that. And so every time it hits, 1 gets added to your score. Josie, just go to Edit, Undo, because you undelete. Edit, undelete, because you may have hit delete and not duplicate. That's just to Josie. All sprites, Valerie, all sprites. Yes, Annika, when the ball touches the lava, stop. That's what we're going to do next. All right, so eyes on my screen. We're going to go ahead and add another sprite. I know we're going through this really quickly. Let me cancel. We're going to paint a new sprite. This is not going to be a super interesting sprite. It's just going to look like lava. And I'm actually just going to have mine be a pretty boring rectangle. There we go. That's the center, and it's at the center, so that's good. Hit OK. And I'm going to put this sprite at the bottom of my screen. I'm going to call it lava. And I'm actually not going to give it any code. But the ball, eyes on my screen, so I'll give you guys a moment and you can paint lava, you can do whatever you want. I just want you to watch how I'm coding it. So if, and we're going to, since this is the losing factor, this is the most important. So within the forever loop, it's going to check this first. Oh, oops. I'm going to pull all these out for the forever loop for right now. If the ball is touching lava, then stop all. And actually, instead of stop all, let's do stop this script. Stop script. So it will just stop this forever loop, or this whole thing. It won't stop your paddle, so that way you could hit spacebar and play again. Okay, so what did I add? I added an if statement that checks to see if the ball is touching lava. If the ball is touching lava, the ball is going to stop moving. It's going to stop this sequence of script, which means it really stops this forever loop from continuing. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to on purpose lose. All right. This script has stopped. The ball has stopped moving, but I can still move my paddle, so I can hit space and play again, and notice that the score will reset. All right, it's 6:55. That's how we're going to end today. I'll still stay on for the last 5 minutes, but I want you guys to get an opportunity to catch up and ask me any questions that you need to ask me. Caitlin, if it's working, yeah, you can log off. Annika, you're right. If you don't code lava, it will sit there and be the most boring thing in the game. That is accurate. What you actually could do is, as the score increases, you could have your lava move up and your paddle move up the y-axis, and that would be pretty cool, right? So, if score, reaches 4, right, then have that would be something like when the green flag is clicked, or let's say spacebar is pressed. forever, and this is kind of more than we've gotten into, but now that's just interesting to me, if we got to use a greater than loop, or greater than block, which we haven't gotten to yet, but it's pretty easy to see. If our variable score is greater than, 2, so equal to 3, glide to 0, negative 156, right? So it would move, since this y-axis is getting less negative, that means it's moving up on the y-axis. And you could do the same thing with the paddle, so that the paddle increases, moves up by 20 pixels, right? Moves up on that y-axis as well, and it makes it harder. That's really interesting, Annika. I like that you brought that up. Okay, it's fine. If you needed to sign off, that would have been fine. Yeah, Annika, make your lava waves like the ocean. Just make sure that it's beneath the paddle. Go for it, Mira. I would love to see your ping pong table background. Ella, I'm so sorry that to hear that. I'd really recommend maybe watching the recording so you can go through step by step. Do you have a specific question that you could ask me? I know that sometimes we move a little quickly. Actually, right before we log off, let's do a poll. Yeah, Maya, I'm going to switch to the lava code. But don't give up. Programming is not easy. It really isn't. It's all about the challenge of breaking up this problem and trying to persevere. Right? It's not something that you can just look up in your history book. It's not busy work. It's hard, but that should be rewarding. And know that, all programmers are going to struggle with their programs because that's part of programming. So. All right, only 30% of you have voted, so please vote. About half of you have voted. Most of you say good pace, but some are saying, okay, good. Numbers are looking pretty good. If I'm going too fast, there's always, okay, these are actually looking pretty good here. Too fast, be challenging yourself. Think about things that you could change with the code. How do you make the ball faster? How do you make your paddle faster? If I'm going too slow, I apologize, but know that you have the recording so that you can go on your own pace at a later point. No opinion. I hope that you're interested in Scratch. That's all I guess my addition there. Have a wonderful evening, and this will be posted either this evening or in the morning.